Hi, my name is Calvin, and I will be training you on how to change a car tire today. So I chose this topic to be training you because I think it's a very important thing to know for anybody that owns an automobile or drives an automobile. A very large percent of people from my age percentile don't know how to change a car tire, which is something that I think everybody needs to know. So before we start, I have some pre-steps included, which is one, you need to always make sure you have extra layers and gloves and possibly an extra pair of shoes if you prefer in your car in case the weather is not ideal. Today the weather is great. It is 52 degrees, so the weather is not too bad, so I'm able to just do this in a sweatshirt, but always be prepared in case of like a snowstorm or colder weather, and I always keep a rain poncho as well in case of rain, just so you don't have to go out in the freezing cold rain and get all wet. The other thing I highly recommend is being in a well-lit area if it's nighttime or in daytime. Also, being in a well-populated area. So right now I am in a movie theater parking lot. That is mostly just because if anything was to happen, people are all around here and they'd be able to see it and I'd be able to get help. And also that these areas are well patrolled and you want to be in areas that are well lit just for your safety. The very first thing you have to do before starting this job is put on your parking brake. So in this car, I just push that and it puts my parking brake on. In other cars, there's usually a lever right about there next to your foot. You can push that in. So the first step is determining which wheel or tire needs to be replaced. Mine is the front passenger side, which is right in front of me. So the first step in this process is to locate your car's manual if you have one. I do not, but they're very easily accessible online. I should probably buy one. But if you're able to find it, it would most likely be in your glove box, or sometimes it's back with your tools. The other part of this step that's very important is locating where your tools are actually at. In a lot of cars, they are in the trunk, so I'm gonna go to the trunk and show you where that is. Cars have a little flap like this, and you just lift that up, and there will be your tools. So now we're gonna kind of go over tools and definitions. So this right here, that is your scissor jack. That is what you'll be doing to jack up the car. This is your lug nut wrench. So that'll be what you put over the lug nuts to break them loose, take the tire off and tighten them. This is the tool for the jack, which is how you will manually turn the jack up. And underneath this is our tire if we're gonna be putting that tire on. So step one will be breaking the lug nuts loose. This is the lug nut right there, right there, right there, right there, and right there. So those are 5 lug nuts. Some cars have 6, some cars have 5, some cars have 4, some trucks have 6. It just all really depends. So the tool you'll need to get those off is the lug nut wrench. And right here is the lug nut wrench. So we're gonna go ahead and grab that. It's also a more common term as a tire iron. That's what I've called it most of my life. So after finding where the lug nut wrench is, the next step is gonna be to break each of these loose while the tire is still on the ground. This is important because if you do not break the lug nuts loose while it's on the ground, the wheel will just spin and you won't be getting anywhere. So the first step is to make sure it's nice and secure on the lug nut. When you're breaking the lug nuts loose, you want to make sure that you turn them counterclockwise, so to the left. So you just turn them to the left like that, and they all should break loose pretty easy, as I mentioned earlier. None of them should be on that tight. So after making sure it's secure on the lug nut, some people push down. I like to use my foot and just break them loose. So you're gonna do that 5 times all the way around. So after you've broken the lug nuts loose, it's really important that you go back and make sure that they're all loose. You can just do that by putting it on each of them, making sure. The next step, we'll be using the scissor jack, which is this tool right here. So we're gonna go ahead and get that out, along with this tool right here. So now that you have your jack out, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is find the jack point on your vehicle and line it up with that little groove right there. Every scissor jack's a little different, but they all have roughly the same look. You wanna make sure where your jack tool goes in is facing out towards you so that you have the ability to turn. So what we're looking for is that. It's kind of like bucked out, it's a hard piece of metal, and it's designed to fit right in that groove. So we're gonna go ahead and line that up, and then you're gonna turn this jack clockwise. So now that I'm pretty close, it's really important that we line up that groove perfectly with that jack. So you might need to do some readjusting,
but that right there is right about perfect. So now we're gonna move on to the next step, which is gonna be using the jack tool to jack up the jack so the tire comes off the ground. I mentioned earlier, so we're just gonna slide that in this groove and then turn it clockwise. This will get a little bit harder as time goes on. So now that your car is all jacked up with the jack using the scissor jack and the jack tool, you want to make sure that your tire is at least an inch off the ground. It's really recommended 2 to 3, but since this tire is the same size and I'll just be putting it on and off, I'm going to leave it like this. So now that the car is jacked up, it's very, very, very important. All the weight of this car is sitting on that jack. For your safety, you never want to have an arm and a leg or any part of your body underneath this vehicle. You want to leave it up just like that. And now we're going to move on to the next step. So our next step is going to be removing the lug nuts. So once again, if you're going to take the lug nut wrench, and if they're tight, then you just need to turn them counterclockwise. All of these are finger loose, fortunately. So all we will be doing is taking them off one by one with your hands. Congratulations, your lug nuts are officially off. That means you are halfway done with changing a tire. Now that you have all your lug nuts off, it's very important that you keep them all in a very safe place. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick these up and just set them off to the side over here because we will be using them later. So the next step is we will be taking the old tire off and we'll be putting the new tire on. So all you're gonna do is I put my knee down here and grab it. Oh, this one's got a little. Sometimes they're a little stuck like that. It's all right. You can just give it a little pop or kick. Just pull off. So just while we have the tire off, these are your studs. So that's what the lug nut is holding your wheel on with. So what happens is when you take these on and off, you're tightening these, and that's holding the wheel on. You take it off, loosens it. So the next step of this process is going to be putting this, your new tire back on. In this case, it's the same wheel. I'm just doing this for demonstration. But so what you're going to want to do is each of these holes, you're going to want to line up with your studs. So I'm going to move this a little bit closer. So that's a pretty close lineup. A great tip for this, so you don't hurt your back, is to grab the wheel with your knees and push it back on. So the next part of putting this tire on is you want to grab these lug nuts that you set off to the side and you want to put them on. So what I do is I have my knee down here in the lower part so that it's level on the hub, and you just want to turn them on. You just want to put them on hand tight. It's very important that you put it on with your hand, that way you don't cross or anything. So I usually start with the top. Now this is probably the most important part. It's very important that you do a star pattern. So you go from here to there, to there, to there, to there. Now the reason this is important is because if you went in a circle like you naturally would think, the hub isn't actually sitting correctly with the tire, and what will happen is it'll readjust on the road, and it could cause for these to strip off, or even you could lose a tire on the road. So it's very important to put them on in the star pattern. So now that you have them hand tight, I usually just give them about one turn with the tire iron to make sure that they're on there secure enough to be put to the ground. So and this time, instead of turning counterclockwise, you're going to turn clockwise. So we'll give this probably a couple turns just like that. Same with this one. And once again, you want to make sure that you're doing that star pattern so everything's going on right. You can kind of see the wheel adjusting as I do this. And that's it, just being put flat in the hub. congratulations, you are now on the second to last step, and you're almost done changing your tire. So now that you have your lug nuts at least hand tight, a little past hand tight, it's really important that you let the jack down. Now that this is stable, that's not gonna go anywhere. You can now let this down. So what you do is you take this tool and you put it in there, just like before, except instead of turning clockwise, you're gonna turn it counterclockwise to loosen it. So now that your jack is lowered and it's underneath that point, your jack point in the car, you can just pull it out, and then you want to close it all the way shut, just like it was when you found it. You just do that by turning this knob counterclockwise. Nice and closed. You can take that and your jack tool and go ahead and put them back where you found them. Now we're on to the final step. So we're going to be taking the lug nut tool, and we're going to be doing the star pattern once again, which is very important, like we said, and we'll just be finishing tightening these tires. So first I'm just going to go around, make sure that they're all hand tight like that. Yep. So now that we have everything hand tight, it's important that we tighten it down, since we don't have a torque wrench, which is most common. And obviously once you get a flat tire, or whatever reason you're changing your tire, once you go to get a new tire, your wheel will be torqued down to spec, but this is just to make sure that's all nice and tight. So in this case, you just want to have that level with the ground, put your foot on it, and give it a couple little bumps. Give it about a half turn. Some do a full turn, it just kind of depends. And once again, you're doing that star pattern. So all those locked down, you just kind of want to go back through, make sure that they're all good to go, make sure there's not going to be any issues. There you are. Congratulations, you've changed a tire. It's a pretty great skill to be able to have, especially on long road trips. And for anybody that owns a vehicle, I think it's very important to know how to do this correctly and safely. And then lastly, of course, you want to put this tool back where you found it, back where the rest of your tools came from. And there everything is, back nice and tight, the way we found it. And now that you've successfully changed the tire, all you have to do is take the parking brake off. Congratulations, now you know a very technical skill of how to change a car tire. Hopefully you never need this skill, but it's always a good thing to learn and know how to do. Have a great day.